So, Moliere said that it's not only what we do, but also what we do not do for which we are accountable. And that is so important, right? So, hi, y'all. Thanks so much for joining me. In less than 50 minutes, I'll be sharing with you 5 things that you can do to improve how you're holding yourself accountable for you and for your business. So like I shared this video, if you get value from it, and if you're listening to the replay on the podcast, just drop a heart in there. We really appreciate your support. I'm Dr. P, and I am a strategic business coach and a business school psychologist for 10 years in K-12 schools in the U.S., and I've served on professional organization committees, and I've also taught more than 10 online courses. So this topic about accountability, because Moliere said it's not only what we do, but also what we do not do for which we are accountable. And let me just take a walk down memory lane, right? Before starting my own business, just like many of you, I worked in an organization, right? Or you might still be working in an organization while you're planning out your business. And in those different jobs that I had, here's the thing. I remember having to do performance evaluations. I remember having to sit and plan those goals that you had to be doing for those performance evaluations that you had to either accomplish by the semester or you had it for the entire year. Then there were all these tasks and actions that you had to complete, you know, throughout the entire year or throughout the semester by these specific deadlines that your boss would have outlined for you for these things, right? And I remember sitting going, oh my God, there are so many other things I could really be doing right now rather than sitting and planning these things out, right? Because it always felt as though there was something else you could have been doing instead. But I still planned them, right? Because just like many of you, why did I do it? Because it was something that your boss told you that you had to do, and you really thought, oh my gosh, I had to do it because I don't want to lose my job. Because of course, you know, it's tied to whether or not you were going to continue in your job. So just like a lot of you, I did them. Then, along with that were some accountability logs. I don't know if you had to keep them, but in jobs I've had, I had to keep accountability logs. And you had to indicate the tasks that you were doing by the day, by the week, or by the month, depending on who the supervisor was and, you know, how they thought you should be keeping track of this information, right? So you had to be keeping this document that you had all these actions that you had to be tracking, you know, the projects that were assigned to you, the tasks that were assigned to you, the deadlines again that were assigned to you by your boss for when you had to get these things completed by. And a lot of times those deadlines were not planned collaboratively. It was a deadline that my supervisor said, hey, you got to get this done by this specific time. And there were tons of times when I'm like, that ain't realistic because that's too much work to get done in that time frame. But guess what? Like a lot of you, I still did it. Why? Because it was a deadline that my boss told me I had to get certain tasks done by, so I still did it. So then there were also those meetings. Sometimes we didn't really quite understand what those meetings were. Some were called staff meetings, others were just these meetings that you had to be doing either weekly, monthly, or both. You know, depending on the boss you had and however often they wanted to hold these meetings, right? So it was all these different things that you had going on, and you get to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, I feel as though I'm being micromanaged because you can't do anything without it being assigned to you, without it being tracked, and you constantly have to be reporting on the progress that you're making on these goals, on these tasks that were given to you for you to be completing. So you get fed up, you know, you get fed up with feeling as though you're constantly being micromanaged, right? So you have this grand old idea, I'm going to be my own boss. Why? Because nobody else going to tell me what to do and how to do it, because I'm going to be my own boss. So then you go there and you start working on being your own boss because it's awesome. Trumpets are going, you're celebrating, woohoo, I got my business. But then you start down that path of actually having your own business. And you started making lists of all the things that you might need to do to really get your business up and running. So from the time you started to figure out, you know, what is a business plan, what to put in that business plan, how to become a legal business entity, getting that business bank account, creating a website, just to name a few of those many things that you had to do when you started down this journey as being an entrepreneur, right? Then once you thought you got all that figured out, came some other stuff like actually developing your business, you know, setting those goals, creating action plans, doing budgeting, marketing, you know, for starters, and again, a lot of other things. but you started with all these things you had to be doing, but then you're realizing to yourself, I'm not really getting a lot of things done, because you feel as though with everything that you realize you got to do, you keep adding and you add in and you add in and you add in. And then one day you're sitting going, I feel as though I used to do more in less time in that job that I walked out of. So when you start down that path, guess what? You start to become frustrated, because you're like, oh my God, I used to get more done in less time when I was working with somebody else, when I was working for that boss that I no longer want to be working for. And you're like, oh my goodness, did I make a mistake? Because so that frustration starts to build. You're starting to feel overwhelmed. You're getting burnt out because, again, you feel like you're doing less and making less action, less movement forward than you used to do when you were in that job that you couldn't stand, the job that you walked out of. But here's the thing though, do not just toss in the towel and walk away and give up on that business idea, because there's something that you are probably missing. That's what I wanted to talk about, and I'm sure if you paid attention to the beginning, you have an idea of what that thing is going to be, and that thing is accountability. That's what it was. That's what was missing from what you're doing right now, is accountability. You walked out of that job or a series of jobs because you didn't like the fact that you were being micromanaged, or that they were actually being micromanaged. But the thing is, being your own boss doesn't mean being a micromanager. That's not what it means. Because especially if you're going to be building a team, it does not mean developing a process where you're micromanaging others. Being your own boss and having that accountability is about being an effective leader that is taking positive actions. That's what it's about, right? So that's what you're missing, some accountability. You got to have some accountability. I'm not saying micromanage yourself. Don't micromanage every single minute of your 7 days a week. No, don't do that. You're talking about taking positive actions to be effective at what you're doing. And that's where these 5 things are going to come in handy to help you with improving your hey, thanks for joining me. So your little wave come up there at the bottom, Daily Victories Counseling. Hey, I got victories right. So thanks for joining me. And when you are going to take these 5 things to improve your accountability, it makes a huge difference. Again, not micromanaging, just improving your accountability. That's what this is. Taking positive actions so that you don't give up on that business that you walked out of another business. You walked out of the organization to become your own boss. So be your own boss. Be an effective boss. So here are those 5 things. First thing to do so your business doesn't suffer is to write things down. That's what you need to be doing. You need to write things down. All those things that you need to be doing, write them down, because you used to write them down when you were working for somebody else, right? You wrote on all those things. So write them down for yourself, for this business that you have. Write them down and keep track of them. And you can write them, you can type them, you can talk them into an app, use sticky notes. The point is, write them down. Because once you write them down, they're easily accessible. And if you have a team, guess what? When you write all these things down, it'll be easier to delegate those things to other people on your team so they can actually get done. So that's the first one. The second one is those things that you just wrote down, arrange them into small goals that are connected to your big goal for your business, your big goals that are in your strategic plan. Because by themselves, those tasks might just look like this laundry list of unrelated tasks that you have going on, and you might not be seeing the connections. But look at those tasks and organize them and put the tasks together and create smaller goals for yourself. And when you create those smaller goals, you're going to start to see how they are connected to your bigger goals that you have for your business, and it starts to make more sense. And guess what? You might even start to feel motivated to actually do the task now, because they're connected. It's not just a laundry list of unrelated things. They're now connected and being more meaningful. So that's another reason why you should write them down and put similar tasks together to create small goals. Then set deadlines. Now, I'm not saying set deadlines just for set deadlines' sake. That's not what I'm saying, because that's putting you on the path of being a micromanager. But you're setting deadlines for reasons for checking your progress. Remember those performance evaluations you used to have, when you were working for somebody else? They were at set times throughout the year, right? So you got to set deadlines for yourself. Hey, Caddy. Thanks for joining me, Caddy. Long time no see. So you got to set deadlines for yourself. And when you're setting those deadlines, be sure to identify a metric. Because you can set a deadline, that day can come, but what are you going to do when that day comes? You have to be looking at, okay, the task that you had outlined to be completed by that specific time, that's the deadline, and what is a metric that you're going to be using to really determine, what type of progress you're making. So you have to be able to identify the deadline, set the deadline, and identify the metric that you're going to be reviewing by that deadline. And when you set those deadlines, you're going to be creating a schedule. Stick to it. Stick to that schedule so that you can actually accomplish these things, right, and be moving forward. So those are 3. The 4th one is recognize and celebrate your progress. Because you can review your progress daily, weekly, monthly, however it is you're going to be reviewing your progress. You're going to be reviewing your progress. Give yourself a reward for the positive progress that you've made, for those small wins that you've actually accomplished. Give yourself some credit for it and celebrate it. This is that time when you're reviewing your performance. So in a job that you used to be working with somebody else was reviewing your performance. Now you're reviewing your own performance, because remember, you wrote down the task, you set these small goals, you had these deadlines. Review your performance, review the progress that you're making, because this time it ain't your boss who's looking at your progress, it's you. You're the one looking at the progress that you've made. And by the way, be honest with yourself. You do have to be honest with yourself about the progress you've actually made. Don't just make up accomplishments because you really wanted to give yourself that reward that you set your eyes on, right? So make sure you're being honest in recognizing the progress you've made and celebrating that progress. So now the last one, the 5th one, is get accountability support. So that support can come in the form of a partner, in a peer advisory group, and working with a business coach. The thing is that instead of going through this by yourself, you might want to have that support, that accountability support. And that's a person who literally is going to hold you accountable for the task that you said you wanted to accomplish by a certain time. And that's a person who can also give you some unbiased, constructive feedback so that you can continue to improve. Because when you were working in an organization with other people, you probably had a colleague that you were working with, and the two of you were working on similar goals, and you were there to hold yourselves accountable towards those things. But then now as an entrepreneur, you don't have that. You're an entrepreneur, you're working for yourself, and that laundry list seems like so much you have to do, even with setting the deadlines. So when you have this accountability support, you have that extra person, that external person who is going to be there and holding you to it. You said you wanted to complete certain things by a certain time. They're going to be there to help support you through it. So those are those 5 things that can help you with improving your accountability, keeping you on track so you can really be your own boss and have an amazing, successful business. So thanks so much for joining me. Remember, solutions plus actions equals results. Samantha and Caddy, thanks so much for joining. Bye, y'all.